everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another PlayStation review. Today's review is for Vampire the Masquerade Swansong. Now this is a game that's just very recently been released on the PlayStation, and it is a game that I've actually been really quite looking forward to. I'm a fan of vampire games in general, and I don't generally think we get enough of them. And I was really excited for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which was supposed to be released around the same time as Cyberpunk when that came out. And that seemingly is in development hell and has been for some time. But what we've got in the meantime is this, Swansong, which is a narrative-heavy RPG adventure. And the best way to kind of give you a comparison for this game, it's a cross between Detroit Become Human and a Telltale game, I would say. There's very little in the way of gaming here. It's heavy on story and interactions with characters and dialogue. So if those are your sort of games, there is certainly quite a lot here that maybe will interest you. Now, unfortunately for me, even though I have been really quite looking forward to this one, I have been finding this a real slog to get through. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but I have to say I don't know if deeply disappointed is the right word, but I am unimpressed, I suppose, with this game. And there's a few reasons for that, and I will go into them. Now, first and foremost, the game is incredibly slow-paced, and the start of the game, I think, will put many people off. It almost put me off from persevering with the game. Now, I would consider myself a very patient and tolerant gamer. I don't get generally really angry with games, and I try and avoid games like that. I try to play quite relaxed, chilled-out games, and I do like narrative games like this for the most part. But the game is so poorly introduced to newcomers to this world, and I consider myself a newcomer to this world. I never played Vampire the Masquerade, that was a PC exclusive, but I do know a little bit about the games, but I know very little about the lore. And this game drops you into this scenario with very little knowledge of the lore of the Vampire the Masquerade, who the main players are, who these characters are, and it assumes you kind of know all this, so you feel completely lost at the start of the game. And essentially the game starts with there has been some kind of party and an incident involving like deaths and vampires and things like that, and you play three vampires essentially in this game. There is you've got you've got Lesha and Caleb. I think Caleb's the eldest, and then you've got MM and Lesha. And they have been brought together at like the vampire headquarters by the Prince of Vampires. And you're all essentially given a task of investigating what has been going on and uncovering the truth. Now, initially, for the first several hours of this game, you are based solely at like the vampire headquarters, and you're all kind of given tasks investigating around these quarters. But it is so dull, and there are a few reasons for that. One of the main reasons is the game doesn't explain itself well. It doesn't explain its game mechanics well. At the beginning, you're supposed to kind of choose a number of traits, I suppose, for your characters, but you're given no indication of what the strengths and weaknesses are of choosing each one. And they can become quite significant because you'll be having conversations with characters, and you've kind of got vampire powers or buffs that will give you strengths and weaknesses in conversations that will allow you to wean out information from certain characters. So if you make a poor choice, you're going to fail that conversation, and you're going to be failing a lot of conversations in this game. It's going to be really, really frustrating for you because you don't know what you should be doing. So inevitably, you end up failing an awful lot of the conversations because you either choose the wrong trait at the beginning for your character, so you can't use a certain buff on a certain character to get the information that you need, or there are certain conversations you will have with characters that turn into confrontations, and those are so poorly designed. There's like, I think there's 3 or 4 stages of most confrontations, and it tells you at the beginning how many of those stages you can afford to lose, whether it be none, one, two, for example. But the final confrontation, you have to win that dialogue confrontation with the character. So if you've used all your buffs up when you get to the final confrontation, even if you've won, the first three confrontation dialogue options, you've won three. You get to the fourth one and you lose that confrontation. It is a bizarre mechanic that will end up with you losing so many of these confrontations, and therefore it will lead to an unsatisfying end to the game, because you're inevitably going to be going down paths that will lead to that, unfortunately, because even though the game does always give you a way to progress through the levels, you do it in quite an unsatisfying way. A character will be killed that you know should be kept alive, and that is down to failings in conversations that you've had, or poor investigations, all that kind of stuff. So you just end up feeling really cross and unsatisfied and frustrated playing the game. And it is just so dull, the investigating. You don't feel like a vampire. It puts in sections in the game where you can find like safe zones. And there are some characters within levels, as you're going to see right here, where you can choose to feed on them if your hunger's getting too heavy. And you go to this ridiculous cutscene, really, where you can feed on them and you've got to stop before you go too far, even though it gives you the option afterwards to feed on them again and kill them. And that brings your hunger down. That's the only time, really, you feel like a vampire in this game. But it feels tacked on. There are other, like, choices that you're given in the game, other scenarios. It gives you, like, say, choose this option or choose this option. And it could be a case of, kill this character or disarm him or disable him, so on and so forth. And it's just dull. You'll find yourself strolling through these levels because you can't run for the most part. Occasionally you can, but very, very rarely. So you're walking through these levels, going backwards and forwards, trying to investigate, trying to find clues, trying to uncover the truth, trying to progress through that level. And you're given these dull puzzles to try and solve. Some of them are really insultingly easy, and some of them are ridiculously hard. It doesn't feel balanced at all. And you're just strolling through these chapters, they call them in the game. You're strolling through the chapters, trying to progress through it. And you'll find yourself walking through levels and chapters, going round in circles, trying to find clues, not knowing what you should be doing next, because the game doesn't really hold your hand at all, which can be a strength in some games, but it's a weakness in this one because the game just doesn't explain itself well enough. You are given the option to level up your character. You can level up their physical, social, or mental stats and things like that. After each chapter, you're given experience points, and that's how you kind of level yourself up. So as the game progresses, it does get easier to progress through conversations a bit better, because you can, skill up your character better. But the first 2 or 3 chapters, to me, I found a real slog. And I just wasn't enjoying playing the game, wasn't enjoying the experience. And I thought this was a game I was really, really going to enjoy. In regards to performance and things like that, there's no issues in how the game performs. I've not had any crashes or anything like that. But I think it's fair to say as well that the game is unimpressive in the visual department. At best, it feels like a decent PlayStation 3/PlayStation 4 game in the way the game looks. Some of the character models, though, are horrific. And some of them are really quite good. It feels like they've kind of given up about 3/4 of the way through and thought, that'll do. The graphics will do. Well, let's just leave it there. Let's just send it out the door a little bit undercooked. And it's just a frustrating experience so far, this game, to be fair. And if it's a game that you're really intent on playing, I would definitely suggest waiting for a sale for this one. It is not worth the price they're asking. It is a bit of a slog to get through. It is a little bit of a dull game to play. And unfortunately, I can't help but be disappointed with it. It's not horrifically bad, But I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because it is undeniably disappointing and certainly not the game I was hoping for. So thank you very much. I hope you found this review useful. I'll be back with more content on the channel very, very soon.